Good morning, everybody. So today we are going to speak on the spine. So we have covered certain important things earlier. Try to recapitulate it quickly. We talk about the various development, how the spine develops, and what are the various components, what are the various primary center and secondary centers in the curve. So quickly, you all know that the spine is so we know that there are certain curves in the spine. We had already discussed about the developmental part also, but quickly you see that the ectoderm and mesoderm, these are the facial component. Ultimately they give the development of your spinal cord and the column. So spinal column as such is consisting of what? The vertebrae, the discs, the joint, the muscles, and the ligaments, all structure of spinal column. One point. Number two, we know that there are certain curves in the spinal column. In AP view, it is straight. But in lateral view, so many curves are there. Cervical lordosis, thoracic kyphosis, lumbar lordosis, again kyphosis at the level of your sacrum. So while we have talked about this, we have also talked that there are certain primary curves, there are certain secondary curves. The initial stage of pain in the infant, you will find at this C7. So mainly the curves at that time is in the thoracic kyphosis and the sacral part, C7. While it starts crawling, so you will develop the cervical lordosis, secondary. Then while he starts standing and walking, another curve develops, that is your lumbar curve. So we do have cervical lordosis, thoracic kyphosis, lumbar lordosis, sacral again kyphosis. So primarily the thoracic and the sacral, others are secondary. And it develops later on, not in the initial stage. That is one. And there is certain ratio also. So if you see the thoracic curve, actually they are compensating each other. It is compensating each other. The thoracic primary curve is being compensated at the lumbar area. So if the thoracic curve is around 20 to 40, almost twice the amount is there in the curve in the lumbar area. 2:1. Yes, sir? So one is when thoracic, if it is 20, then it will be around 40. So that way they need to balance each other. So that is the curve. So there are primary curves, there are secondary curves. How it develops, we know. And in the process of development also, there is development in vertebra. So we all know that vertebrae are developed by certain primary centers and the certain secondary centers. The primary centers are mostly three in the broad development of the body. Yes. So one is in the upper end plate, one is lower end plate, one is in the center. To develop the primary anterior part of the body, most of the body part. The remaining part of the secondary is mostly by the five secondary centers. Five secondary centers. Five centers are mostly the spinous process, transverse processes, and the joint. Yes, sir? So this is how it is developed. So it is developed like this. One is your primary center here, primary center there, primary center in the center, and the secondary centers are behind. They're all important to the development of the head. And while we have talked about also, we had already discussed while talking about the cervical spine vertebra. Cervical spine vertebra being the other vertebrae, thoracic and lumbar. So while you talked about the cervical spine vertebra, then the C1, C2 are a bit different. C3 onward, they are all almost similar. We have already discussed this thing. quickly, the C1 it cannot, it is also known as atlas, which is devoid of any body. And the cervical vertebra can be differentiated from the other vertebrae in the presence of the foramen tendons. This is important. So this is important. And that is one. And C1 and C2 should be a different. So occiput C1 and C2. This area is called what? Caniocervical junction. The caniocervical junction is a different category where you have C1, C2, and the caniocervical. It's a very important thing. Sub below that part is almost have the similarities. C3 and up to C7. Thoracic, and then in this cervical spine, we have talked about the joint. See, this is a joint here. See, it's almost fused. There are two vertebrae are there, and you see the design of this joint. That is joint. It is oblique in this 30 degree almost. Yes, the characteristic of the joint. We have already talked about the lateral mass. Here you can see, one can able to see the lateral mass very nicely. This area. So lateral mass is very important. That is why I am stressing the point again, that you have to know what is the lateral mass. And this lateral mass is very important, particularly in cervical spine instrumentation. That in the vertebra you see, it is the foramen. Yes or no? This is body. These parts are the pedicles. And these are the appendices. So this is the upper articular surface of this vertebra. This is the lower articular surface. And see the directions of the body. It is obliquely placed. This is very important for us. And what is lateral mass? This is the lateral mass. See, this is the spinous process. This is what? Lamina. This is your angle. See, if the lamina, if you trace, then you find a furrow here. This is one border. Another border is this lateral border. Another border is this upper articular surface. Another border is there. So this area which is confined in between these boundaries is called lateral mass. Lateral mass. So lateral mass is very important, and one should understand the orientations also because of the fact that this is important for the fixation. As you all know, most of the time, spinal fixation is mostly done by the pedicule. Now, one can make out the size of the pedicule here, and this lying, it is very narrow, 1 point. Number 2 point, it is lying between the two important structures. One is your vertebral foramen. Another is your, what is this? 10%. And what is it? Vertebral artery is going. So you have a two important structure lying, and through which you have to pass this screw, which is a very narrow one. So this safety margin in instrumentation, particularly from the posterior side, particularly in the pedicle, in the cervical spine, is not very easy. Your precision should be very correct. Otherwise, there is every possibility of injuring to this or this. But without doing this risky thing, one can do the lateral mass fixation very nicely, and it also provides a better stability. Why it is important? One is from stability point of view. Number 2 point is that the cervical spine have to bear less weight than the lumbar or the. So one can make out the vertebral size is progressively bigger downwards. Why? It is all because of the fact that the vertebrae need to bear more weight. Yes, that is why progressively it is becoming bigger. And in these situations in down below, one need to go for the pedicule fixations that gives better fixation than this. In true sense, it is true that the fixations in the pedicule screw is much better than that of your lateral mass. But even then, since this is load in this area is less, safety margin is better, so one can go for the fixation here easily rather than going for the pedicule screw. That is important. Number 2 point, a little bit of the thoracic vertebra also. One can make out this thoracic vertebra with the help of this is prolonged. The going downwards accordingly. 1 point. Number 2 point is that you do not have this foramen here. Yes or no? Foramen. You do not have the foramen deltocerebrum which is present in cervical spine. You do not have. Number 4 point is that look at the articular surface. See, the articular surface is almost anterior-posterior. Now, if you articulate the another vertebra here, you will find this is the joint here. This is the joint here. See the design of the articular surface? The one we must have a very good orientation and the understanding also that what is the orientation? See, it is lying anterior-posterior. Whereas this same articular joint is lying obliquely in the cervical spine. And same joint, if you go down below in the lumbar area, you will find it is lying like this, side to side. So this orientation is very important to understand also. And this also speaks about the mobility of the joint. In the cervical spine, you have so many movements there. You do not have same movement in thoracic spine because the orientations of the joints is lying anterior posteriorly where you can do like this. You cannot like this. This is not possible because the joint doesn't allow it. Yes or no? And you should understand that point. And you see the down below, this is side to side. So one is oblique, then anterior posterior, then side to side. In the lumbar area. This is the orientation of the joint. This speaks about the mobility also. The orientation also speaks about the mobility. Understood? Now you talk about little bit of your say the vertebral, intervertebral discs and also what is called functional unit of the spine. We have already discussed about the various ligaments there. Quickly, we have the anterior longitudinal ligament anteriorly. Here you have the posterior longitudinal ligament. In between the lamina, we have the ligamentum flavum. We have the joint also, which also have the articular surface and also capsules. That is also part of the ligament. Then the intraspinous ligament and posterior spinous. These are called PLC. Posterior ligamental complex. You are supposed to understand this is a very important thing. While you talk about the stability of the spine, and a PLC. So you have to suppose what is called PLC. So anterior longitudinal ligament, posterior longitudinal ligament, and this. And in this context also one should understand about the various three columns. What are three columns? One is your anterior column, then is anterior column, where it is the anterior half of this body will be along with this part, it will be anterior column. No. Then your posterior column limits of the posterior longitudinal ligament, and rest of the part is your third column. The middle column, anterior column, posterior column. This should understand. This is important from the Dennis point of view. Dennis stability point of view, one should understand about this. Yes? Okay, fine. Next point is what is called functional unit of a spine. This is functional. Say everywhere you have a functional unit. The nephron is a functional unit of the kidney. Hepatocyte is a functional unit of the kidney. Like also spine is a spinal functional unit. This functional unit is consists of the adjacent part of the end plate, the disc, and the joint. So this area. So this area, which is called a functional unit, it comprises this. This is a very important thing because your every organ has got some functional unit. So functional unit is consisting of this adjacent part of the two end plates, this, and the arterial joint posterior. So this is called functional unit. This is a function. This sort of what is the function in the spine? Supposed to know that this is this functional unit. Yes, this is important. And you know, little bit of the this also. While you're talking about the anatomy, we are still dealing with the basic things only, not going to the other thing. So you must have a good idea about this. We have talked about the cross thing. Not talking about the very details also, but you have focused on some practical point and also the orientation also. So you have this inside. So intravertebral disc, you all know, have two components. One is called nucleus pulposus in the inside, and you have surrounding structure is called annulus fibrosus. So annulus fibrosus is holding between the two enfleshed margin. So they are crisscross like thing. So just like the tire, here they are called crisscross like. So you have many layers there which is holding it, and it is also a type of joint. Inside we have the nucleus pulposus, which is a semi-solid sort of thing, consisting more than 70% of water, proteoglycans, and proteolytic enzymes, etc. So there. And this is important. This is also a type of joint. Two types of one that it maintain height of the vertebra also. This is 1/3 to 1/4 of the vertebral height is maintained by the disc. Maintained by the disc. Yes. And it is say maintained by the disc, and the height of the contributions of the individual discs is more so from the lumbar area where it is around 9 mm. In the thoracic area almost around 5 mm, and in the upper cervical around 3 mm. So 3, 5, 9. So this is the contributions from this your individual area of the spine, which collectively contributes about 1/3 to 1/4 of the height of the vertebra. Normally 61 centimeter in case of female, 71 centimeter in case of male. It is total height. Total height of the spinal column, which is again being contributed by the vertebral body and also intravertebral disc. And the intravertebral disc contributes around 1/3 to 1/4, and majority part is coming from the lumbar area 9, then 5, then 3. You all know the functional part of the intravertebral disc is a unit, it is a component of the functional unit of the spine, and helps us what? Helps us mobility, equidistribution of the work. See, while the weight is falling on it, this nucleus pulposus is responsible for equidistribution, so that pressure is not concentrated at one area. This is equidistribution, helps. Number 2 point is the height contribution. Number 3 point is while you are acting as a shock absorber, jumping, doing something, falling from height, high jump, all these things you are doing daily activities, where the shock is being absorbed by the disc. Very important. So these are the contributions for it. As a whole, spine has got so many contributions. How about its function? It maintains the erect posture. We are polybrated and vibrated. Yes or no? So axis is the spinal column. It helps in protection of the neural structures. It also gives the attachment of the ribs to protect the vital structures in the pelvis and in this area. It also gives us the mobility. Yes, mobility. So this is the functions of the spinal column as such: the mobility, protection of the important structures, and maintaining erect posture, and also doing all the movements. And out of that, in the vertebra, what is the contribution by the disc? This contribution acts as a shock absorber, helps in equidistribution of the city, equidistribution of the weight, and mobility. So many things are there. And this is a avascular structures. In other words, the margins are getting supplied. So you have to know about a little bit of the blood circulation also. The vascular nature, interspinal artery, posterior two spinal arteries are there contributing the whole spine. And one should understand the importance of the Adam-Quiz, artery of Adam-Quiz, which is in thoracic area 7 to 9 level. That is very important because this area, junctional part, is mainly supplied by the one major artery, that is Adam-Quiz. So injury of this vertebra may lead to a devastating injury to the impact on the spinal cord may cause your irreversible damage. So you have the anterior artery, you have the posterior spinal artery, and particularly in thoracic area 7 to 9, you have this. That area is mainly contributed by artery of Adamquiz, which is very important in the sense that solely it is supplying that area. And if you do not, if you get injured there or vascular pathology is there because of block or what might be, that may lead to a devastating consequence of the spine. And the vascular, Betson plexus is the venous genus. And the characteristic of the Betson plexus is that it does not have any valves. Usually, you do have valve in your mind. The valve helps in the drainage of this blood from the down below. You know, you have valve systems. In the valve space, there is congestion. And drainage of the venous blood is disturbed. But here, in the spine, you do not have valve system. Instead, you do have a pressure gradient effect. So if the pressure is more in the right side, upper side, it will go down. If it is more in the left, the down side, it will go up. So it is the principle base. Very important. So that is why an infection may spread from this side to that side. By the Betson plexus, the vertebral process or no. Because the Betson plexus is devoid of any area, any part. Very important. You should understand the important things. Then this is gross thing. So you all know about the vertebral foramen and intervertebral foramen. You must have some idea. What is the function? Inside, this is the shape. The shape of the vertebral foramens are not same. It is in thoracic area, it is somehow like this globular. It is somehow a bit triangular in shape. And it is also round in 77. See, this is it. The important thing one should understand is the fact that a spinal cord is coming. We have meninges, 3 meninges, pyometer, ectometer, we all know durameter. Then the cerebrospinal fluid, all know. The cerebrospinal helps in buoyancy and also at the shock absorber. Suspension. So the impact of the force is not directly causing the nest. It is distributed in this fluid. Also, it is butting in. Important thing. On the other hand, you should also understand the fact, the occupancy of the cornea. One thing you know that is injury in the thoracic area and injury in the lumbar area are different. You will find if a small disc is collapsed at the thoracic area, the neurological damage is more. Whereas a massive disc collapse in the lumbar area may not cause some sort of symptoms. Why so? It is happening because of this occupancy of the cord. How much canal is being occupied in neural structures? More the canal is being occupied by the neural structures, there is less room for the other thing to accommodate. Yes or no? The other structures, you have the epidural fat mainly, cerebrospinal fluid. So more the fluid, the impact of the force will be absorbed by them. Yes, understood? But if you do not have that much of space, the impact of the force will be directly causing damage to the cord. So that is why one should understand that in the cervical spine area 35%, 50% like this. But see, sometimes you will find these things in practically that there is massive disc prolapse. They are happening in the lumbar area, but there is no neurological deficit. Patient is fine. But there is no neurological deficit. Why so? Because this has got more space to accommodate the foreign structure, whatever it might be. But this thing is not applicable in case of your. So occupancy of the cord you're supposed to understand. What is the percentage? More the neural structure is occupied with canal, more the chance of injury, less is occupied, less is the chance of. Like example thoracic spine, and there is example of your lumbar spine. Yes. So other things we are not going to talk. What is phylum terminally? You all know phylum where it ends, the end level. That is one. Conus medullaris. What is this? Where it ends? What is your tuft of your hair? Like that's what is called? Huh? Kodaikuna is supposed to know how it is coming. These things is supposed to know. Kodaikuna, now on the other hand, this injury to the Kodaikuna is less than that of your cord. Cord area, if there is injury, it is upon your level, but the root area is involved with your motor level. And also you have a more space to accommodate. This is another advantage in the lumbar area. Yes? Okay. This thing is supposed to understand. And then the cervical spine also is supposed to understand the thing. Now next thing we will talk. Any question? Any question till now? Regarding the anatomical part, we have dealt with various types of anatomy actually nowadays. Not today. We talked about the developmental part, how it is developed. Yes. We have talked about the different curves, primary curves, secondary curves. We have talked about the cervical spine vertebra, how it looks like. What is the typical cervical spine vertebra? C1, C2 is different. And how it looks like the thoracic area. What is the functional unit of a joint? What is the contribution? What is the contribution of the disc? How did this get nutrition? As I said, it's a diffusion mechanism, mostly. Diffusion mechanism by which get in nutrition. And the functions of the spinal column as such, function of the disc as such, and also occupancy of the cord inside the spinal cord canal and intervertebral foramen. You all know where the neural vessels are coming, 31 pairs coming. Okay, sir? So it is this. Now next thing is that we are more concerned about the injury of the spinal cord. We are talking about it now. We are going to switch about the general things about the trauma. What are the general things happen in the trauma? This is a developmental part, this is anatomical. You have understood. So in the trauma part, you are supposed to understand certain things. That in the injury, that there are two types of injury actually. One is your primary injury, one is your secondary injury in the cord. So one should understand certain important points also, what is called neural spinal shock. What is various shocks, neurogenic shock and spinal shock. So these things we are going to talk now. So we are concerned about the spine mostly in three conditions. One is trauma, one is your infective pathology, where in third world country we go to tuberculosis mostly. Another is your certain deformities, and another is degenerative conditions. Certain deformities like scoliosis, kyphosis, these things are there, developmental mostly. Then in elderly part you mostly get a degenerative kyphosis period. Okay, sir? So in the childhood and the development you will get the various deformities, scoliosis and the kyphosis and scoliosis, kyphosis are other things. Then you may get various inflammatory conditions also. Then in the middle age group, mostly trauma and inflammatory cause. Sometimes infective one. And elderly part degenerative. These are the various complicated problems we come across. Out of that, in the third world country, most of the times we get morbidity and mortality in relation to spine is basically trauma. And death to rotatic accidents are more common. Fall from height, one, and also rotatic accident is a major contributor to the injury to the spinal cord and spinal column. One thing is supposed to understand that while a person is cervical spine is coming to the injury, there is possibility of injury to the other part also. So that is why non-contiguous injury is seen around 20-25% of the cases. So you have an open mind always there that I am getting a spine injury like this in cervical area. Rest part is over, nothing like that. So around 20 to 25% cases you will find there is injury to the non-contiguous. Cervical spine will be thoracic area is cervical spine the other. Combination of injury will be there 20 to 25%. But that is why important thing that you have to screen the spinal column as a whole and also make it a habit of screening the spinal column as a whole, so as the possibility of chances of injuries are less. 1 point. Number 2, we always give more importance to the higher level injury than the low. So suppose higher level means if the cervical spine is injured and you are doing only the lumbar area injury and it is everything is fine, the cervical spine injury is ignored, then the result is zero. So that is always important to do. That upper part always gets importance. Now, while there is the impact of the force, there are what happens? There is injury. So injury, tell me there are 2 types. One is called primary, another is called secondary injuries. In this, what is the primary injury? So while the impact of the force is injuring to the spine, so it may cause contusion, laceration and compression. So direct injury. So any direct trauma which is happening there is lead to your direct injury on the cord. So it may cause contusion. Like it may cause laceration. Yes, it also cause compression also. This is direct trauma. And we do surgeons of the area do not have much role to play in this thing. But next thing is what? It is called secondary trauma. Secondary injury. Secondary insult. What is secondary insult? Secondary insult is just like supposing if somebody is punching on you on your eye, what is happening? Black eye, edema, swelling. Because of what? Post-traumatic cascade of inflammation. So injury-induced inflammatory process starts. Yes or no? Supposing somebody is hitting you, what will happen? There will be edema, there will be blackening, there will be swelling, so many things inflammatory process. Sometimes it may end up in infection also. Yes or no? So these things are happening in a trauma. Same thing is happening there in this spinal cord also. This is called secondary. So there will be permeability, laceration in tissues, so inflammatory process is going on. What happens? This leads to edema also. So you have a very compact panel and this inflammatory process, permeability increase, inflammatory process increase. So many inflammatory reactions are taking place because of the necrotic tissue, the macrophage is coming, the permeability is increased, the inflammatory process. What happens? This leads to edema, injury or swelling. And if you do not have to accommodate this area, what is happening? Compartment syndrome in there is the leg. So same thing may happen here also. So that is why this part is very important in 2 ways. That if you do give more movement to area, there is every possibility may insult may mount out. So that is immobilization in the early stage is important. That is why in case of trauma situation of cervical spine, we always give pressure importance to the immobilization, so that there is no mounting of inflammatory insult to it, traumatic insult to it. 1 point. What next? Giving steroids. So you all know there are so many studies, there is controversies of course. Giving steroid, yes, no. Even then, most of the centers in throughout the world, and if the patient comes very early, one should go for this steroid. You know all this dosage system, last dose, and subsequently follow up. Solumental, most of the time is being used. Why it is used? It is also stabilizing inflammation. So you know steroid acts as an anti-inflammatory drug. Yes or no? It is a good anti-inflammatory drug. So same benefit may be also received or got in case of spinal trauma, which may somehow stabilize the inflammatory process and prevents further damage by increasing the swelling and other things. That is why these steroids are given. So there is controversy here. Even then in the early stage when the patient is coming very fresh, their steroids plays a very important role. And this is basically to reduce what? Secondary inflammatory cascades. Post-traumatic. Post-traumatic cascades of inflammatory events. So you can reduce and stabilize it. Now that is your that traumatic part. And what is happening to the neurological pictures? So neurological pictures patient may come to you a spinal shock. What is spinal shock? So spinal shock is the suspension of all the activities of the spinal cord, irrespective of the trauma. There may not be any injury to the cord. And there is all flexibility, no reflex, nothing sensory, all these activities are suspended. This suspension of the activities lasts around 24 to 48 hours. Yes? So suspension of all the activities of the spinal cord following trauma, irrespective of the trauma injury, actual insult, actual injury to the spinal cord is called spinal shock. And usually it lasts around 24 to 48 hours, sometimes long. Now question arises, a patient is coming to you, if you do the neural assessment immediately, so there is a confusion because patient is flaccid. You look like there is a transaction of the cord because all the activities are suspended. This is not the true picture because the patient at the time is in this spinal shock. This is because of the sudden depolarization. Yes, so you should understand. That is why actual assessment of the neurological damage in a trauma situation should be done after is over. Spinal shock is over. Now, how do you know it? The spinal shock is over. The reappearance of the primitive reflexes are the most important thing. So, what are the primitive reflexes and how to do it? Valvocavernous, sphincters, spasm. So, you stimulate the clitoris of the female, there in constrictions, or in gland penis, you will find the constrictions of the anus. Then in trigon can be stimulated by your catheter, then may lead to your spasms. So these are called primitive reflexes of the, because these reflexes are not controlled by the above. They have a control in the lower level. So it is not been controlled by it. So that is why this primitive reflex, when it appears, it indicates that this spinal shock is over. And this is a time period you should supposed to do the neurological examinations of the cord. Yes, that will actually give up the picture. And this neurological examination nowadays should be categorized according to ACA gradings. ACA grading. So ACA grading is a nowadays acceptable norms of the earlier days we used to paraplegia, quadriplegia, monoplegia, so many things you use. But this is not, it is a cross terminology, unable to speak a very specific MS to the cord. So that is why these are not very specific terminology. Speaks very cross things, unable to quantify the degree of insult. So quantifications of this can be done with the help of SCI gradings, where you look for the certain things. For the motor, 5 motors, 5 upper limb and 5 motors in lower limb. And also sensory examination in the clavicular line like this. and you have to categorize and quantify. So you have to give the essay gradings. That is how it is done. Crossly, there are two things may happen. One is your complete, one is called incomplete injury to the spinal cord. One is complete, meanwhile there is a complete 10 sections of the cord. 10 sections of the cord. Another word is maybe incomplete injury to the cord. So incomplete injury you have to do. So there are two things may happen. So we know there are so many things may happen in the spinal column. So many combinations of the injury, the flexion, extension. We'll talk about this specifically while doing this specific vertebral area. But what actually relate in the spinal cord you're supposed to understand. There are two things. One is called primary trauma, one is called secondary trauma. What is the mechanism behind it, and when to assess actually neurological deficit after recovery of the spinal shock. How to look for it? You must know it. Then you do the assessment. Assessment should be getting under the basis of the essay grading. Crossly, there are two types. One is called complete transection of the cord. Another is partial injury cord. The partial injury, you have to again know there is various syndromes. That anterior cord syndrome, where the anterior cord is done. Posterior cord syndrome, posterior cord is done. Down secret syndrome, one half of the cord is done. Central cord syndrome is supposed to know. Syndrome is supposed to know. So these syndromes are also important to tell us the injury to the spinal cord and which part is involved. There you have to know various locations of the various tracts in the spinal cord and its behavior. What is how the corticospinal tract is coming, whether it is decussing or no, in the same side, and what are the spinothalamic tract, what is the anterior lateral spinal tract, what are the contributions by the tracts, you're supposed to know. This area you have to know. And then you can make out what is bicycle syndrome, one half, then what is happening to the opposite side, what is happening to the same side. You are supposed to know, because same side corticospinal is taken, but the other side is pain and the temporal side is infected. Why? Because of the decussation of fiber. So these tracts are important. What tracts are lying here? Posteriorly what tracts, anteriorly what tracts. These tracts will location of the tracts and the function of the tracts will tell you that while there is a damage, what is happening. From the examination, one can make out, oh yes, this is a brown cord syndrome, because these things are happening. Then you have a central cord syndrome, where classically you will find upper motor type of paralysis in lower limb, lower motor type of paralysis in the upper limb. Yes, so you have this one. So cord, maybe see, what is the consequence of the cord? We have talked primary, secondary, and the other mechanism. Then also what practically happening to the cord while damaging, what is a complete section or the partial injury. Partial injury may be again central cord syndrome, anterior cord syndrome, posterior cord syndrome, branch cord syndrome, syndrome. So this is very important. Then you have to understand. Then while doing the assessment, you have to know the neurological status of the post-operative cases. You will know better there. Otherwise, it will be difficult to understand. So anatomical knowledge is very important to understand, and then also how it related in the case of trauma situations. So this is the next time we will talk about the injuries proper, about the cervical spine, what are the possibility of injuries, in thoracic spine, what are the possible injuries, and then lumbar spine, what are the possibility of injuries. Okay, thank you for your patient hearing.